So you all know we have an amazing staff here. You've met all our coaches. Let's give them a big round of applause. So obviously they do a great job on the court, but there's a lot of stuff they can teach you guys off the court. They've been nice enough to take some time to prepare some things for you guys. When I was your age, I thought I was going to be a basketball player. As you can see, it didn't work out for me. But basketball is still a big part of my life. Okay, there's a lot you could do within the game of basketball, and it doesn't have to be within the four lines of the court. Okay, so Coach Nick is going to talk a little bit about his experience in basketball. He's how old is he? 31 years old. He's already become a general manager of a G League team. He'll tell us a little bit about his journey, answer any questions for you guys. So let's give Coach Nick.
I'm going to talk about 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to do a discussion with JH, but feel free to ask questions throughout, and maybe make questions as we go. But I wish, I will always want to work in basketball. I grew up watching the Celtics, and that's all I ever wanted to do. I just didn't think it was possible. I'm like, that's just like a dream, that's a joke. But it's absolutely possible, and I think if someone had told me a lot of these things I'll tell you, it would be really useful if you do want to work in sports. I'll talk about there's some cool things about it and some not so cool things as well. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. Yep. So this is my basketball journey. I grew up a huge Boston Celtics fan. I grew up in Maine. I always wanted to work in basketball, and I just said it was possible. I started working at Stanford, then I worked with the Sydney Kings in Australia, the national teams in Australia, and then the South Bay Lakers, LA Lakers, now I'm in Mexico City. So with Stanford, I moved out to the Bay Area after college, and again, I only wanted to work in sports. I was like, I was literally emailing the Warriors as I was driving out there. I'm like, I'm gonna get a job. I'm good. Which you have to be a little delusional to work in sports, but we'll get there. But I started working basketball camps. I stayed with my aunt and uncle, and my college roommates, they all lived out there. So that's how I made it work that first summer. Eventually, Stanford hired me as their coaching intern, because I did 8 basketball camps there. And those are just a blast. You're working with kids all day, and you're working with a lot of those coaches I worked with at those camps are now in the NBA or working for an agency or something like that. Coaching intern, video coordinator, which is basically a coaching assistant. I just worked so much though, I was completely burnt out, and I was like, if that's what working in basketball is, I don't want to do that. I'll do anything else. I was at the Final Four, and everyone's like, oh, I want to work here, I want to work there. I'm like, I don't want to work in basketball. I'm good. But I met an Australian at the Final Four, and he kind of connected me with the whole Australia basketball scene, which was just luck. I heard his accent. I'm like, I'm kind of looking at moving there. There's a 1-year visa. Yeah, go work in basketball there. Okay. But yeah, there's not much to see there. I worked with the Sydney Kings. I basically walked into their practice. So you want to help out? Yeah, sure, come help out. The youth national teams, U17, U19. That's all. It's really easy to work in Australia in basketball. There's just not many people kind of do it. But at the same time, I had to work other jobs to stay afloat. I literally cleaned sailboats here, and later on in LA, I cleaned sailboats as well, so that was the start of the theme. But sailboats, I worked at a software company, I worked retail, I had to work all these side jobs just to make a living. 2016 Olympics, again, I was working on Australia that year, and my whole goal was maybe I could get to know the national team staff and somehow get to the Olympics, and sure enough, I got to know the staff, and that's Kevin Durant. I was editing the video when we're playing USA. But so many times, and Jonah can probably, and any coach can probably, it's is this job a joke? Am I actually doing this? I remember we sat down and so how are we gonna stop Kevin Durant? I'm okay. I'm cleaning sailboats, but sure. Yeah. And pillow delivery. They had tiny pillows in the village, so I was that guy. But it was unbelievable. I mean, just to wear any country on your shirt, it's honestly a joke, but it was an awesome experience there. And then I moved back to Maine, which was miserable, and it was snowing. And I booked a flight out to LA. It was a $60 flight, and I was going to go back up to the Bay Area and get a normal job, because I worked at Stanford, so I'd play with like the founder of every company you've ever heard of. Is insane. Like, I'll just go get a tech job and like move out of my parents. But started in LA, I met him for lunch, and I'm like, this kind of seems like a job interview. This is weird. And they hired me. I had like nothing. This is one of 2 shirts they gave me all year. 2 shirts. I was like on the bottom of the bottom. But airport runs, laundry. It was probably like 95% not basketball, but still loved it. And it still kind of felt like a joke once again. But I was on the coaching side for about 3 years, and I switched over to the front office scouting side the last 2 years with Stealth Bay and the Lakers. Yeah, then with the Lakers, I worked for both teams at once. It's kind of the middleman between the 2 teams. Won the Summer League championship with Jonah. That was 2017. Yeah, it was awesome. It was, probably is kind of still a mess, but there was a lot of turnover when you're like that low on the bottom. You just kind of working your way up. They kind of like forget about you, but that sometimes when stuff is that unstable, it helps you out. But awesome experience. Jonah, cover your eyes. But yeah, this is the championship ring we got. And I heard about the Mexico City job in 2017. There's, rumors, still are rumors that it could be an NBA team someday. So this is kind of like a test run to see if it works. Yeah, it just kept being annoying. Made it clear I want the job. Everyone's like, you're not going to get it. You're not Mexican. I'm like, okay, we'll see. But we're going to be in Mexico City this upcoming year. We were in Texas this past year because we didn't want to fly across the border a bunch. But it's a fun challenge. It's definitely, there's challenges outside of basketball, as you can imagine, in Mexico City. But glad I'm doing it. And yeah, it was the right step in my career. A lot of people thought I was crazy, like, why are you leaving the Lakers? But it's a family business. There's only so much you can do sometimes, and I kind of reached that point, and now I only really report to the owners, so it's a great experience. So things I like about the job is it doesn't feel like a job unless I'm doing my receipts, expense reports, and it's absolutely miserable. But the coworkers, it feels a little bit like this trip. It feels like you're traveling with family. The coaches family. It's just like, it does feel like a job, but at the same time it doesn't. It's flexible. I love how you just go in. Now it's like normal, but forever you just go in when you have to work, and you don't have to be there. You don't have to just sit there for whatever and just stare at a spreadsheet. And it's pretty cool. Like you'll go to, you'll be working on something. Like, we worked on getting Alex Caruso, and then like you'll be at a bar and like, man, Caruso's good. I'm like, yeah, he is. Like, I hope he is. But it's just cool how like people are seeing your work. And again, like I've said it a few times, it's like, is this real? Like what am I doing? But you also get to travel to some pretty cool places. Like working in sports really opens up a bunch of opportunities. What I don't like about the job, it's really difficult to have a life outside of the sports sometimes. Hours, weekends, I worked on every holiday. Like I think 5 straight years, I would wake up at 3 a.m. Christmas Day, then fly to Los Angeles because we played Christmas night. Just like no one else in the world's doing that. Airport's empty. But yeah, it's definitely not as glamorous as it appears. This is probably the first 5 years of your basketball career. Like I was just pumping up balls, giving out shirts. Like yeah, you get to do video, you get to do some cool things, but this is the reality of the first 5-6 years, and the pay is very low. I'll talk about that some more, but it makes no sense. But it's really unfortunate. The first 5, 6, 7 years, I was serving weddings until I was 28. And cleaning sailboats till I was 27. Like I started cleaning sailboats in LA, so I'd clean sailboats from 7 to noon, then have practice in the afternoon, night. It's just like, what are we doing? But that's what it is. Makes no sense. Like I'm not trying to reason with it, but unfortunately that's the reality. Here's a few suggestions. We're going to talk more about them, but so going into college, I wish someone had told me to be a student manager. So basically you're like a assistant for the coaching staff. You're also, say you go to Colorado where I went, you'd go to school, but you would work at practice, you'd fill up the Gatorade, you get like a good Gatorade combination, you get to have some fun with that. But you're basically, yeah, we'd make some things the coach like looks at it like, what are you doing? But yeah, you work at practice, rebound, you can travel with the teams. Sometimes they get scholarships. That's really only like at like Duke or Michigan State or a top basketball program. But it's with the women's teams, men's team, I would highly suggest being a student manager. And sometimes on the women's team, you're a practice player as well, so you get to go in. But yeah, I would definitely look into this. And if you go to grad school as well, you can be a graduate manager, assistant, and a lot of times they'll help you get into school as well. So that's what I always thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to transition out and get my master's degree and work with the basketball team, but I don't think I'll transition out at this point. Step 2, so I'd say after college, work in basketball, whatever sports thing you want to do. A lot of people will say they want to work in sports, but they don't do anything to actually work in sports, but I think John's a classic example. Like, he wants to work in basketball, he wants to work in sports media. He has 32 work experiences, and he's like 21, so it's just like, just do it. Like, stop trying to make, oh, I kind of know someone who knows someone's like, it doesn't matter, just like start working at whatever level, whether it's high school, middle school, literally just do it. And then stay connected with those people that you work with. And for basketball, yeah, you want to gain experience, but you have to start meeting some people as well. So summer league is awesome. We're going to be at the next 50 summer leagues, so anytime you guys go out, like, reach out, just say, hey, we went to Greece together, like, we can meet up, I can introduce you to people. But I would definitely suggest summer league. It's really fun. Portsmouth Invitational, that's right now in Virginia, and I decided not to go. And then, yeah, G League Showcase, not as fun. But yeah, I would definitely suggest going to the summer league. You just meet a bunch of people, watch a bunch of games. It's really cool. And you get to meet anyone in the basketball industry. And step 4, I would, you've met, this table, a bunch of people here. Like, use this as resources. Like, maybe we can never get you a job, most likely we can't, but you can ask us, hey, what do you think I should do to get an internship, or what should I study, or just like ask us for an answer. We all have different experiences, so maybe we have different perspectives on what you can and can't do, or should and shouldn't do, but just use us. Like, I think a lot of people think, just because you know somebody can get a job, like, maybe, like, sometimes, but we can point you in the right direction, which is much more valuable than just like getting you some internship or something. And now we're gonna talk like 10-15 minutes. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, but yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So one of the things a lot of people like when they look at sports, they think of, well, it's who you know, right? But obviously that's not always true. What does it mean to really know someone well and build a real relationship with them?
I think it's obviously who you know, but when I started this, when I was working at Stanford, I knew no one. Like, I liked watching basketball, that's about it. But it's when I started working basketball, I did basketball camps, and they saw me work with little kids. I took the first and second graders, and they cried the whole time. I was just thinking, like, I'm not gonna get a job by being the best coach. I'm gonna get a job by seeing how hard I work. And like, yeah, they're bawling their eyes out all day, but just having the coaches see how I work with them. And then when I worked that year at Stanford, they saw me just like literally sleep in the locker room. I told you a few times when I was miserable, but they knew I'd do anything to get the job done. And then when I went to Australia, one of the Stanford coaches went to the Lakers, and then he made that connection when I came back. So it's like, yeah, I met that Stanford coach. He saw me working with little kids, and he saw me sleep in the locker room and do anything I needed to do to get it done, which is not healthy, but I did it. But then that's what gets you a job. It's like who you know, but then what they think of you as well. And now, like, when people I trust, they call me, they're like, hey, like, this person's awesome. Like, Jonah suggested anyone to me, I'd be like, okay, like, yeah, I'm gonna hire him. Like, I don't need to interview anyone else. And we've had a couple people who have hired, they just have good recommendations, and that's all it takes from someone you trust. But, yeah.
So even though this is called, like, how to get a job in basketball, not all relationships are for that intended purpose, but like, that's not the end goal of the relationship. So right. What are some relationships you've had where knowing someone helped you in a way that wasn't a job?
Yeah, that's a good kind of thing. Good.
Like, you're going fine right there.
Well, I think just in the sports and basketball world, it's such a small world, so I'm kind of blanking on like specific examples, but like you know people that we have no connection with, and if I meet like the GM of the Cavs, I'll like give you a shout out, and now all of a sudden we have like a little triangle. So I think like it's such a small world, even on the business side, that you'd be shocked that if someone works in community relations on the Denver Nuggets, they'll know the GM, and now you have like a whole triangle there, but it's a tiny basketball world, which is really cool.
Same connections are really valuable.
Yep.
And it's really crazy how that can all work and how it can branch out. You mentioned the business side just now, and we've kind of only been talking about the basketball side, coaching, scouting. But there's so many opportunities in the business. It's almost a whole other path that we can.
Yeah, and there's way more jobs on the business side. So Nike, NBA, you can just go on for forever. But there's tons of jobs on the business side, much stable paycheck. You get vacations, you get weekends off, and really cool careers too. So don't just think, I mean, yeah, being a coach and working on the basketball side is cool, but there's other opportunities across all sports, across media, TV, analytics, data analytics, stuff like that. Like, keep your mind open to whatever you guys want to do.
So for a lot of these kids, right, everyone's thinking about college admissions, college applications, what major they're going to take. And it's obviously a very stressful time making that decision the right one. But when it comes to working in sports, what does that all come down to?
On the coaching side and basketball side, it doesn't really matter as much what you study. Like, sports management is probably the best choice you could do, but I did geography. I know a coach I work with, he did, God, what was it? It might have been art history. Yeah, it was something super random, but or philosophy, Casey Owens. But it doesn't matter. Like, you just have to finish, but it's also about the work experience that you get that we've talked about. That's most important. Now, on the business side, business degree, sports management degree, that's really important.
Okay, so now you can throw it into any of the kids who have any questions, any of the parents, coaches, anyone that has someone can make that for us presentation.
How did you just start at Stanford?
So I moved to the Bay Area, and I had no luck like getting a basketball job. I was so naive. I literally thought like the Warriors would respond and be like, yeah, we'll sign you up. But I talked to the Stanford director of basketball, and he's like, just work camps, and kind of take it from there. And I got another job offer from UC Santa Cruz too. I was kind of waiting on Stanford, but I got 2 job offers just by doing, I think I probably did like 20 basketball camps. And I definitely suggest doing those. It's really fun. You get paid. It's not about getting paid, but it's a blast. You're just working with kids all day. You could do, in New York, you could do like 100 schools, but in the Bay Area, it's like Cal, Stanford, UC Santa Cruz, San Francisco. So I just did as many as I could, meet as many people as I could, and Stanford worked out the best, yeah.
Are there like certain internships to get to gain an experience to do like what you're doing?
For sure, and a lot of them you have to be a student too, so that works in your advantage. I remember after I graduated, it's like, couldn't get anything, but that does help. But I would still suggest being a manager. With, basketball would make the most sense if you want to work in basketball, but with the men's or women's team, they'll take you if you want to be a manager.
Oh yeah, so like when you worked at Stanford, you said like the job was really like grueling and tiring. So like what motivated you to like keep pursuing this career?
It was more, I didn't want, so the guy above me quit because we had no life and it's miserable, and then it was all miserable, but I didn't want to give up like on the team. That's a team sport, and I had like a massive role. I kept on telling him to hire someone else because like physically I was waking up at like 4 in the morning to do airport runs and picking them up at midnight. It's grueling. But didn't want to give up on the team, and I basically did give up. I was like, I'm moving to Australia. Like, if I work in basketball, that's the goal. But if I don't, I'm still living in Australia. Like, I'm gonna have a life for this year. But it really just, I fell back in love with basketball when I was in Australia, when I was back into like the pure form. I wasn't working 100 hours a week. It's just about having fun at basketball, and just the coaches there, the work culture there was much more friendly. You know?
You said that like you didn't have a life. So like, what motivated you? What goal were you working towards? One job that like you just had no life.
At Stanford again, it's like I didn't want to give up on the team, and we were having a pretty good year, but I just wanted to keep plugging away. But I did give up. I mean, I didn't fully give up. I'm like, I'm gonna go to Australia. I met the guy at the Final Four. I'm gonna try and make it work. It was actually a lot easier than I thought, because no one there wants to work in basketball. It's kind of like if you want to work in rugby in the U.S., it'd be pretty easy. Like, not as many people are trying to do it. But I literally went to a Sydney Kings practice because they had a former Stanford player, and went up and just started rebounding. They're like, yeah, like, want to go to court? Sure, like, sweet. I like kind of forgot how to do it. I was like Josh Childress, who like I looked up to, was there, but he kind of did it. I did it. It was easy, and and I really liked working in basketball again with them. And also when I went to the Lakers again, it was a positive experience. I worked a lot, but it wasn't like I was throwing everything to my life to the side. Yeah.
Did you prefer to work in Australia or in Los Angeles? Just for like, I guess like management time. For like Stanford, like you didn't have a life, but in Australia you were like doing everything.
I think Australia really fit my personality. I mean, their whole work culture in general is really chill. Like they take like 6 to 8 weeks off a year. They get like weeks off for holidays. They don't work until like midnight. I was coming from Stanford where that's just the work culture in the Bay Area. You just work like crazy. So I think like Australia really fit my personality, but also in LA, we have Luke Walton and then my boss. They were on the same page about like having a life and like, yeah, you're gonna try as hard as you can at your job, but if I want to go skiing on a weekend, like I don't need to hide that from anyone. I'm going to go skiing. So I really appreciated how they were. It's not always like that, but it's the same thing in Mexico. They're very like, we know you're gonna do your job, just do your job. Like I don't really care what you do. Yeah.
So you said that it's not always like that, but it'll be like not that they'll give you a life. So are like most job offers that you're gonna get life management, you're just gonna be like a slave to your job?
I mean, not. I think in college, it's a little. The work culture is a little bit more like that. But in the pros, generally you have more help, you have more interns. But I think unfortunately in a lot of industries, your first 3 years, you're not a slave to your job, but you do work a lot. That's kind of the entry point, which is I don't agree with, but that's what it is. Yeah. Do you want to use that?
Yeah, just to add on to one thing he's saying, like, raise your hand if math is your favorite subject in school. Hi. Your parents.
Peter.
So like, just say you don't make it to the professional levels as a player. If you guys were into analytics, that's like a huge field right now in basketball. Okay, so that's a potential career to look at. For yours, like your favorite subject is science.
Actually,
Amateur count.
oh, it's easy.
Hey, listen.
Kevin's easy.
So science, physical therapist, doctor, athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach, right? You have all these different avenues to go there. What about English? Writing. Public relations, right? You're doing press releases. You got a lot of different options. So just to add on to what Nick is saying, half of you guys didn't raise your hand. You can't say Jim. Okay, but to add on to what Nick is saying, no matter what you're interested in outside of basketball, there's a way to fit it into sports. You just have to be creative with it. Community service, if you like giving back, every professional team has a community service department. So just think outside the box. It isn't always just about coaching or being a GM. Like every organization is very well rounded.
Yeah, I think we had about 200 employees at the Lakers, so there's accounting, there's every job you could think of with them. Especially on basketball ops, like they're expanding analytics right now. Like I think they had 1 or 2 people for about a decade, but they're gonna make that like 5 or 6. So yeah, there's definitely room for. They're probably gonna expand every role, honestly, at the Lakers. Yeah. Anything else?
I got a question.
Yep.
You suggest going to college in a bigger or a smaller city? For this specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes smaller is better because if you go to if you went to like Wisconsin or you go to like a big university, it's hard to stick out. When if you go to a smaller school, you can be the head manager for a team. And I like hiring people from smaller schools. Not that they're necessarily in a smaller city. Like I'm not really sure on that. But smaller schools, because you're kind of showing that you just love working in sports, you love working in basketball versus working for like University of Arizona where you could like it because all the free beer you get or like the private planes and stuff like that. But I'd say smaller for sure. Yeah. Yep.
You seem to have a pretty a big network and it's important for that line of work. So what social media tools do you use to stay connected? Is it like Twitter, LinkedIn? What's
I would definitely use LinkedIn. I just add like everyone and anyone that I know. Not that I like blindly will reach out to people, which a lot of people do. And sometimes it works. And when I had no connections, I did do that. And sometimes they did respond, like maybe 1 out of 10. But it's cool when you look up someone and then you see you have some connections, and then I'll ask them like, hey, do you know this person? I've definitely used that a few times. So I'd say LinkedIn's probably the best. And Instagram, I mean, social media you kind of have to use to your advantage. I don't really know, like I'm not in high school anymore, but I definitely use Instagram to show what I'm doing, because sometimes you kind of go invisible. Like I remember Luke Walton said he didn't use Instagram, so one of the assistant coaches, Isaiah Fox, was like, oh, I'm not gonna use it. Like no one knows who you are, Isaiah. Like you can do that, but like if you go coach in Australia for a year, no one's gonna know. Like they're not. So yeah, I do suggest to coaches to use some social media. Like, don't be a clown with it, but I think it's useful. Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Good. That's it. Yeah.
Mike's up.